All right, since we're in the midst of your college application project, we are going to spend today really kind of looking at the college essay. And as you can see here on the screen, we're going to be taking a look at the do's and the don'ts. And really, in a lot of ways, you're going to find that this is, I acknowledge a little repetitive because certainly things that we're going to say that you should not do will certainly kind of flip and take a look at, well, this is how you should do it. So in some ways, you might find this to be a little repetitive. But that's okay because it's certainly meant to emphasize points that you should and should not be doing when it comes to your college essay. Now, for this week, understand that you're not really writing your college essay yet, or at the very least, you're not submitting your college essay yet. Right now, you're simply kind of taking a look at the schools out there that you're interested in, finding information about those, and you're also finding out what are their college application essay requirements, whether they're using the Common App and those prompts that I discussed in the overview for the college project with you, or do they have others prompts that are specific only to their school? So while you're doing the research of the school, certainly pay attention to the type of prompt that they want you to be answering. However, I still want to go over the college essay with you this week because the college essay typically is not something that a person just sits down and they begin to write immediately. The ideas don't always necessarily come to someone's mind right away. You might have some ideas, some brainstorming things that you want to kind of take a look at and potentially investigate and write, but usually the words don't really kind of flow, whether it be on the paper or the computer screen. So it's good for us to spend some time this week going over what you should and should not do with the college essay, and then you can kind of have that going on in the back of your mind while you're researching your colleges. Or I do think it would be a good idea for you to certainly begin to kind of draft some ideas for your college essay, but you're not responsible for coming up with those final copies yet. Keep in mind before we get too far into this, for you are writing prompts that are on the Common App for this year, for the year 2020. So those are not going to change. So when you are doing your Common App submissions over the summer and next fall, those will be the essays that you're looking at. But that does not mean that the essay that you write for class is the essay that you're ultimately going to submit. It might end up being a draft. You might decide that you want to switch prompts, and that's perfectly acceptable, but you're at least going through the experience of writing the college essay at this point so that you have some ideas as to what works and what does not work for you when it comes to the actual essay that you're going to be submitting. All right. So I'm acknowledging up front that this PowerPoint's a little bit lengthy. I'm going to break it up into two sections, but I want you to take a look at both sections this week so that you can certainly have some ideas as to what to do and what not to do with your college essay. All right, so let's get started. Some things that are important to, there we go, now we can get started over here. Some things that are important to consider is how much, I don't want to say weight, but at least how much emphasis, how much time goes onto the essay portion of your college application. So question posed up here on the screen, what is the average percentage of time an admission officer spends on the essay portion of your college application? That's not to say how much weight, how much emphasis goes onto the essay, but of the designated amount of time that they're looking over your application, and your application is certainly going to include your transcript, resume, and that transcript is going to have grades. Your actual application itself, which is going to have work experience, extracurriculars, volunteer experience. Transcript is going to have grades, but it also could have AP exams, SAT, ACT scores. You're going to have letters of recommendation and things of that nature. Some of you are going to be having portfolios depending upon the school that you're going to. And then you also certainly have your essay that you're submitting. Of all those components that they're going to look at, the percentage of time that they spend on your essay for the college application ends up being roughly 33%. So about a third of the time that they designate towards your application, they're going to spend that on your essay. And honestly, when it comes to your graduating class, I kind of wonder if that number is going to go up because transcripts are going to be different. SAT, ACT requirements could end up being a little bit different because of the lack of ability for widespread testing, obviously in April and May and things of that nature. So if anything, for your class, for the graduating class of 2021, I could see even more time being spent on the college application. But typically, 33% of the time that they spend on your application is going to be focused on that essay portion. So that means you're really in control of at least a third of your application, which is giving you an opportunity to really showcase something about yourself that might not otherwise come through. And let's be honest, the audience that I'm speaking to right now, GPAs, SATs, ACT, AP exam scores, all those things are pretty good. And a lot of you are going to certainly be able to get into some very high quality schools that you're hoping to. But the college letter, your essay application can still, in some ways boost you into a higher profile, might be able to get you into an honors college, might be able to, maybe you're accepted into the university, but now you're be able to get accepted into the specific major that you want to, that otherwise you might not have had that opportunity. It might allow you to get into some schools that you kind of consider to be a reach, and you might actually kind of write yourself into into those schools, into those programs. So even though, on paper, the numbers, the statistics, and all those things about you as a student look very good, and deservedly so, this is still giving you an opportunity to add an element to your application that some other folks might not be able to do. So you certainly still want to place a lot of emphasis, a lot of importance on what this essay is, because it's an opportunity for you to showcase something about yourself that otherwise does not come across. They know what your SAT score is. They don't need you to write about it, but they want you to be able to write about something that otherwise does not come across about you when they're taking a look at that documents for your application. So certainly keep that in mind. All right, for this first video, we're going to look at the do's for the college essay. Here's what you do want to do. And then the next video, we'll take a look at these are the don'ts. These are the things that you should try to avoid, as best you can. All right. Your admission officer is going to be reading a fair amount of college essays. And you want to give that person a reason to keep on reading. I'm sure a lot of their essays kind of start off the same way, and they begin to kind of get a little tired or dull of the essay that they're looking at, or it can become very predictable and they basically know what it is that they're going to be reading. You want to give that admission officer a reason to keep reading. And keep in mind, the person who's going to be reading your essay is probably not, it's definitely not a professor in the history department or the English department. It's probably not a 65-year-old person wearing a tweed coat with elbow patches. It's probably someone who is 22 or 23 years old. Chances are it's not the officer, him or herself, but it's probably a grad student who is working in the admission office as a way to earn a little bit of money, room and board for college with grad school, and this is a way that they're able to do that. So you're probably writing someone closer to you in age and interests and things of that nature than you would be writing to someone my age or someone who would be 10, 15, 20, 25 years older. So, give them a reason to keep reading. Put some time and effort into that introduction. And it's important to acknowledge that this very well might be a sentence or two. You're not writing a 5-paragraph essay. This isn't an AP exam. There's not going to really even be a thesis statement because you're not making an argument about a passage or a synthesis or a DBQ or any of those kinds of things, but you're just kind of providing a little snippet of who you are as an individual. So that introduction might just be a sentence or two before you jump into the main part of your essay. You might even just jump into the main part of your essay without giving an opening sentence or paragraph. It's important to note there's not one proper format for writing this. They do not want that cookie cutter essay, that everyone is writing. They want something that's going to be a little bit different, that's going to be unique. Doesn't mean it's never been done before, but they want something that's unique and certainly best showcases you. So hopefully you can create, maybe some mystery, but at the very least a little bit of intrigue in that first paragraph. Or it could even just be, as we said, that first one or two sentences, because you're not going to have that intro paragraph followed by a body paragraph. Most of you will probably write 2 to 3 paragraphs. We're dealing with 650 words, so there's not going to be that clear opening couple body paragraphs conclusion like you even do with the TWA. You're probably looking at, here's the first part of my response, here's the second, maybe a third could be happening. But, that intro and even that conclusion can kind of shrink down to what you need it to be in order to be concise, so that you can really spend most of your time developing the answer to the prompt, not the argument, but basically the details that are going to kind of showcase about yourself. So, this sentence that we have down here at the bottom of the page, my favorite science project was a complete failure. It's an innocuous enough sentence. It's not fancy wording or anything like that. But as a reader, I'm kind of curious to find out what in the world happened with your science project that made it a complete failure, because some pretty interesting images start to come into my mind as to what a failing science project could be, so far as some, imagery, results, explosions that could be happening. So that's something that's going to want to kind of make me keep reading, because I'm just curious at this point as to what's happening. This is probably the most important thing that you would want to remember when it comes to writing your college application essay. And I think this is where people tend to kind of veer off the path that they need to stay on. Keep your focus narrow. You cannot write a biography of yourself. You cannot choose a full 2 week experience that you did. Let's say you did a mission trip for your church and you went into Kentucky and you were building houses with Habitat for Humanity for 3 weeks or something along those lines. You're not going to be able to cover all of that in 650 words and get the important details across. You're going to take a little sliver, a little snippet of a bigger example, of a bigger memory, of a larger experience, and write about just that one part. So you want to keep your focus narrow as to what's the aspect about this experience or this belief, this idea that I have, this problem that I want to solve or I think I can, and really focus on a single point. The most common comment that I'll make to someone with a rough draft or even a final part is really you want to focus on just this aspect of your experience. You can't cover the whole thing. And they know that there is a 650 word limit. And no, you're not going to write 651 or 652. You're going to keep it within those 650 words. On the other end of the spectrum, how long does it need to be? I would say there's no reason why you can't have at least 500 words. If you can't write 500 words about this experience or about this prompt, then it's time to pick a new prompt and move on to something else because there's not enough resonating with you in order to write about that. So, essays that try to be too comprehensive and cover a lot of ground, they end up seeming very watered down or more of a summary rather than really kind of learning about what that experience has done for you. I think a good approach to take is look at experience, that has certainly had some kind of meaning, some kind of significance to you. And that doesn't mean it's the grandest experience of all. It could be, an essay assignment, a school project. It could be a simple meeting with a relative or a grandparent or a conversation that you had at lunch. But what is it about that experience that has impacted you now and is going to continue to impact you moving forward? And how has that shaped the individual that you are and the individual that you want to become? And that really means then that you have an experience that you would want to take a look at. But this doesn't mean it has to be an experience that's so unique that you're the only person that's ever traveled to a certain place or held a certain job. So by keeping that focus narrow, it gives you the ability now to focus on the message that you want to tell to the reader, so that you can deliver, that representation of who you are. You don't have to get so involved into telling the story that message ends up getting covered up by it. Really, what is the focus of that experience? What was the impact? What is the impact still? And how is that, kind of changing or affecting who you are in the present time? And as we said, move it forward. This is your essay. You want to keep it personal. You're the one who's applying to school. So if you are writing about experience where other people are involved, whether it be friends or relatives, make sure it is the details about you that's coming across. If you were writing about, the impact that your 11th grade English teacher had on you as a person and a student and how Mr. Kane has molded you into a better human being than you ever thought was possible, you're probably lying, but you're also kind of more of selling me than yourself. I've already gone to college. Your grandmother has already gone to college or has probably already had that moment of her life come by and she's not worried about trying to get into college. Make sure that story really is focusing on you. So it's fine to have other people included into the story, but the emphasis of it, or that experience, but the emphasis of it really needs to be about you and how this is going to really kind of showcase something about yourself that the college wants to know. All right. You also do want it to be specific to you so that it's not too much of a pre planned, kind of canned essay that the student next to you or the one in the next state, next county, wherever would be able to tell. So, kind of stay away from some of those general I overcame adversity when I got cut from the sixth grade soccer team kind of story, because that's something that's going to be told and told and told by many people, and it really ends up not being that personal or ends up not really being that unique of an experience. We talk about this all the time with rhetorical analysis, have examples from the text, or with an argument. You want to be able to make sure you have evidence. You want to be able to prove that main point that you're looking at. So provide vivid, specific facts, support, details. Get into the specifics rather than just having kind of general cliche statements. And certainly when we get to, we're looking at the do's right now. In the next video, when we take a look at the don'ts, we're going to do the opposite of this. We're stay away from those prepackaged statements or from those rather vague general kind of concepts. So make sure you get into the details, the facts that really only pertain to your experience, and you allow that idea, that argument, you allow that picture of yourself to unfold through all of those unique details that you are going to be providing. As I said, you want to avoid kind of cliche, generic, predictable writing, and a good way to do that is using, as we said, those vivid and specific details. So an example of something that a lot of folks would consider to be boring and generic would be a statement along the lines of, I want to help people. I've gotten so much out of life through the love and guidance of my family. I feel that many individuals have not been as fortunate, and therefore I would like to expand the lives of others. That might be a heartfelt statement, but it's a kind of statement that's going to show up in multiple college essays and isn't really kind of showcasing anything about yourself. An example that is going to certainly have more of that personal detail, and it's still going to have the same, thought process along the same lines as the boring and generic statement, would be something like, my mom and dad stood on plenty of sidelines until their shoes were filled with water, or their fingers turned white, or someone's golden retriever signed his name on their coats in mud. That kind of commitment is what I'd like to bring to working with fourth graders. What I now know is what that love and guidance was from the family that I did not know in the first example. I also know how this person would like to expand the lives of others by going into the classroom and working with fourth graders. And what I hope to find out now is how that same level of commitment that was provided by this person's parents, this person thinks that they're going to be able to provide to students in the future. So they're setting themselves up to certainly have a more specific vivid essay. That doesn't mean the boring and generic example here at the top is going to be a failure when it comes to an essay, nor is it a guarantee that the second one is going to be a superior essay, but it's certainly setting itself up to be a more specific, focused, vivid essay than what this first example was beginning to provide. Here's a big thing, and this is part of the reason why I want you to do a little bit of research for the colleges that you're thinking about applying to. Make sure you know what's going on with your subject. Make sure you know what's going on with the university or the college that you're going to be applying to. So any factual errors in that essay is going to reveal that you really haven't thought deeply about your choice. So for example, if you're writing about in an essay how you want to attend, Syracuse University, and you're going to major in international business, this would be a major blunder that you would want to avoid since Syracuse does not have an international business major. So what might happen is you have to write multiple essays because not all your colleges are going to use the Common App, but maybe a focal point of some essays only work for certain majors, certain schools, and it's not going to be applicable to another school. So if a person's writing to Syracuse, which is going to be covered with, like 8 feet of snow throughout much of the year, you might have a different angle that's getting looked at when it comes to writing to USC and LA or something along those lines because the concepts that get covered might not be applicable to both schools. So make sure you know your subject. Make sure you know the schools that you're applying to. Make sure you know who you are, and you certainly know what it is about yourself that you want to convey to those schools so that they are getting an authentic and a relatable, a pertinent kind of caricature of who you are as an individual and why you would be a good addition to their university campus. This seems kind of obvious, but make sure you're answering the question or you're answering the prompt. So as we've already said, or as I've already said, a lot of students try to turn a 650-word essay into a complete autobiography about yourself, and you can't do that. And not surprisingly, these students fail to answer the question or the questions, the prompts that they are looking at. So make sure that every sentence in your essay exists solely to answer the question. Now maybe that existence is to help set something up, but if you are looking at a sentence and you're going, I really don't need that for this particular essay, for this prompt, that would be one that you would delete and take out. You only have 650 words, so you may as well make sure that every single word, sentence, idea, even piece of punctuation is going to be significant, is going to be important to that idea. Some essays, some applications outside the Common App, you might submit completely online where you have to type your answers in a text box. And so instead of doing a 650 word essay, they might put a character limit on it. So punctuation, spaces, all of those things, hyphens really become very important, as important as the letters and words, because it takes up just as much space. So you want to make sure that you are maximizing, you're being economical, you're maximizing all the letters, words, whatnot that you are using. And that's something where even getting rid of to be verbs, that are kind of stressed all throughout the year, can be helpful because it can help condense and make your writing a little bit more concise, so that it's not that you need more time to get more content into your essay, but you might need more space. So if I can shave off 1, 2, 3, 7, 8 words in these sentences, that can give me a couple sentences at the end of the essay that I might otherwise not have the opportunity to compose. So you certainly want to maximize as much as you can. Syntactic fluency is a good thing. You want to vary your sentences. You want to vary your sentence structure. You don't want it to sound like you are doing a C-spot run kind of book. At the same time, you don't want this to kind of run on like an early 18th century or mid 19th century text where semicolons and dashes are all over the place and you have very long, lengthy, confusing sentences. So by varying the sentence structure, it makes it very readable. That simple, compound, complex doesn't mean you have to be in a pattern the way that we kind of did with some of those revision assistant essays, but you want to be cognizant of your sentence structure to find out, am I repeating the same type of sentences over and over again? What also typically tends to happen for a lot of folks is we tend to repeat transitions. So words like nevertheless, furthermore, however, consequently, we will overuse. I know for me personally, however, it was a word in high school and in college that I would use, way too much. And so I would do a control F, find how many times I used the word however in an essay, and then go back and replace some of those. So start to be aware. And I know you've done some things like the no to sentences should start with the same word, in an essay or in a paragraph and things of that nature. You don't have to go quite to that extreme, but certainly be aware of the words that you are using. And if someone, whether it be a peer or a parent or me, goes, you might want to kind of consider rephrasing some of these words, we're doing that for your best interest so that we're trying to get as unique and effective a voice coming across through that essay as is possible. Mention passive voice, use active voice verbs. Overuse of the passive voice can make things seem flat and uninteresting. The words is or was can certainly start to multiply all over the place, and it can really kind of bog down and drag down your writing. Plus, you take a look at the fact, as we said, of trying to eliminate some words. Passive voice, the tray of food was dropped by the waiter. I have 5 words up here, 4 words down here, 9 total for that sentence. The waiter dropped the tray of food. Here I have 5 words, 2 words, total of 7. I've shaved off 2 words. Big deal? Maybe not. But if that's something that is continually happening, habitually happening throughout an essay, I could be shaving off 20 or 30 words, which would certainly allow me to get 3, 4, maybe even 5 sentences added into the essay that otherwise might not have been available for me to use. And then the other main thing, you do want to conclude effectively. And again, that might not be a closing paragraph per se, but those last statements, that conclusion, that's the final opportunity. That's your last chance to persuade or impress that admission officer, or at the very least, that admission reader. So you want to make it interesting for a long last impression. Avoid summarizing what you already said. So end with something that's going to kind of help showcase who you are, extend the argument a little bit. Avoid, this is why I would be a ideal candidate for Chapel Hill at the University of North Carolina, where it's going to be a prepackaged statement, or avoid that summary of stating everything that you already did. Make sure you're ending with something that's going to be significant, important to that experience, to that memory, to that obstacle, challenge, whatever it is that you're writing about, that character trait about you. Make sure you end with something that is going to be significant, important, and is going to leave a little bit of an impression. One last thing that's not on here. I know it says CollegeEssay don't, but I thought this would be a good thing to end with before we start this next section. Another thing to do after you apply to your schools, I would send the admissions office, and you don't know who the officer was that was taking a look at your essay, but I would send that admissions office a thank you. And don't do it immediately, but a couple weeks after you submit your things, a simple little thank you note, and you're not going to thank them for accepting them yet into the university, because that has probably not quite yet happened, and you certainly could thank them later. but give a quick little thank you note. And even an email is something, but I think a personal card, handwritten letter, or not letter, but little card note is going to certainly kind of resonate. Thank you for taking the time to look over my materials. Thank you for the opportunity for me to be a part, of your college, of your university, of your campus, of your community. But I think that's one little way by not adding on to the essay, but it's another little way of leaving a little bit of a personal impression from you onto that school. Doesn't mean you're guaranteed to get into that college, but if you're kind of on the fence a little bit, or they've read a bunch of essays and it's kind of been a long day, some kind of little memento, some little card, some little note, something from yourself that makes it a little bit more personal, that might be a way to kind of seal the deal a little bit and make them think of you one more time before they ultimately make those college decisions. So thank you note is really can go a long way, not only for a letter of recommendation for a teacher, coach, mentor, whomever, but also to the colleges and university itself. All right. So those are the do's of the college essays. We'll come back here in a little bit, and then we'll take a look at the college essay don'ts.